United Nations Human Rights Chief has warned of the growing risk of crimes of atrocity being carried out in Gaza as a result of deteriorating conditions there. Volker Turk highlights overcrowding due to civilian displacement, the lack of aid and widespread hunger.
In these circumstances, there is a heightened risk of atrocity crimes. Measures need to be taken urgently, both by the parties concerned and by all states, particularly those with influence, to prevent any such crimes. The international community needs to insist with one voice on a ceasefire immediately on human rights and humanitarian grounds.
Alex Cartier joins us live now from Brussels. Alex, what are these atrocity crimes that Mr. Turk is referring to?
Well, he wasn't specific in exactly which ones he was referring to, but legally speaking, according to the United Nations, the four are war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. And that really is the real scale of what Volker Turk is talking about there, and very clearly showing the starkness of his warning. Now, both Hamas and the Israeli forces have been accused of committing atrocity crimes based on that legal description by the United Nations. And he reiterated what Martin Griffiths, the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Human Rights, described the apocalyptic situation in Gaza, saying that that situation, the current situation created by the conflict, will heighten the risk of those atrocity crimes being committed. He also reiterated that of the 1.9 million of the 2.2 million people living in Gaza have been displaced and pushed into ever diminishing and extremely overcrowded places in southern Gaza in what he described as unsanitary and unhealthy conditions. He also said that because of the hostilities resuming after that last ceasefire, humanitarian aid has all but been cut off into Gaza, and that will only worsen the situation. So certainly that situation, that worsening situation, the restarting of those hostilities, creating more of a chance for those atrocity crimes being committed. A really stark warning there by Volker Turk.
Alex, the aid has dried up since the 7-day truce ended, and the situation continues to deteriorate. What is Mr. Turk proposing be done to alleviate the situation?
Well, the very first proposal is an immediate ceasefire, calling for the international community to insist with one voice on a ceasefire immediately, were his words, on humanitarian humanitarian grounds and human rights grounds as well. That is the short-term solution proposed by Volker Turk. He also spoke more broadly about countries that have influence on either parties in the conflict to exercise that influence robustly. So you would imagine the United States will be very much in the minds of those there. And he was asked specifically about the United States, and he said, look, countries with influence on either side of this conflict have to use that influence as robustly as possible. In the longer term, Volker Turk also talking about looking at the future, looking at what happens after those hostilities are ended, after this war comes to an end, saying that the situation cannot go back to the way it was before, reiterating again, as we've heard from Wang Yi, as we heard from Anthony Blinken, that two-state solution. So certainly the UN pushing very hard for that ceasefire. Also saying that themselves have not been allowed to access these areas, making it even more difficult to fully assess how bad things are on the ground. So even without being able to fully assess that, the United Nations is very clear the situation is very stark indeed.
Alex, thank you for that. Alex Cartier there in Brussels.